The gate is metal and old, a mouth of black iron and rust that yawns on the edge of the market in Osu. A small brass key hangs from a thin cord at the watchman's throat, bright against his dark shirt like a promise. The air smells of fried plantain, diesel, and something sweet in the heat of mango juice. Far down the road a convoy is coming, engines low and hungry, and people on the street flatten against walls. The watchman, Kwame, feels the key warm against his chest. He hears a child scream, a horn bleat, and then a shout, "Move! Move!" The leader of the convoy steps out in a suit that drinks the sun. Men with badges map the sidewalk with hard eyes. A woman grips a baby, and the baby's rain-slick hair glints with sweat. She moves toward the gate, and the men bar her way. Kwame lifts the latch. He could lock it, hold them out, watch the convoy take the stalls and the old houses that stand crooked behind the market. He chooses the other way, swings the gate open, and lets the woman slip through with her child, breath rattling like a bird. The convoy roars past, and the air feels thinner where it passes, like someone has pulled a sheet over the day. The brass key swings and catches the light. Some nearby boys who always point and laugh call him watchman, an old fool, and whisper bets about how long before the council evicts them all. Kwame breathes in diesel and mango and decides he will not let the gate be the place a whole neighborhood ends. People know Kwame by his gate. He stands there at dawn and dusk, tied to the same spot where his father stood, where his grandfather stood before him. He wears a faded cap and shoes with holes. Children toss him pieces of cake that they can't afford, and he eats them smiling. He knows the schedule of the town like a second heartbeat. He can tell by the smell of the first bus whether it will be late. He can point to the exact brae, Isaac, where pigeons like to sleep. He knows the names of those who sell fried fish and the old woman who ties bright cloth around her ankles and laughs low. Some call him a fool because he never leaves, because he opens the gate at odd hours, because government men pass and he does not bow his head. He is patient in a way that people call weak, but he keeps the brass key near his heart like a kind of vow. The threat comes first in paper. A councilman named Nana Abankwa, with hair like a fist and a mouth like a coin, reads out a plan to build a mall on the market's bones. He talks about development with doctors' talk and economists' lies. The paper says the land belongs to the state now, and the traders must move. A merchant, Auntie Amma, sweeps rice into a sack and laughs bitter with the sound of wind. Someone offers Kwame a hand of money to leave his post. A man in a clean tie offers him a thicker hand and says, "We can make this easy, watchman. A little for your trouble." He puts a small stack of bills into Kwame's palm. The bills feel like wet leaves. Kwame hands them back and says, "This gate is not for sale." The man in the tie smiles the kind of smile that hides razors. The councilman calls him simple. The boys on the street throw stones. A store sign falls under the first rain and the whole market smells of wet wood and damp salt. Kwame meets obstacles one by one like stepping stones across a wide river. The first obstacle is the notice itself, a court order that looks like a key but opens nothing. It names dates and lawyers and says the people must go. People worry and wrap their wares in tarpaulin at night and sleep in chairs to guard what they can. Kwame pins paper prayers to the gate, old receipts, small photographs, a bead from a necklace, and he puts them under the brass key for safety. The second obstacle is the developer, Kweku, a man whose laughter sounds like a shutter. He brings a team of men with hard boots and a long list of men who will sign away a life for a glass building. He tries to bribe, then to threaten, then to charm. He brings a playlist of high voices and a young woman singer who sings about modern things like escalators and coffee that smells like the inside of a coin. Nights become loud with the developer's radio and men with clipboards measuring out the market. The third obstacle is the people. Fear makes them turn on each other. A trader who once lent salt refuses to let her neighbor borrow money. Rumors crawl like lizards. Some say Kwame sits with the councilman at night, dealing in shadow. Others say he is protecting a secret that will shame them all. Children who once climbed the gate now tell stories about the hidden room that Kwame keeps. The fourth obstacle is violence. Men who wear no uniform but carry clubs come in the night and smash a stall that had been folded with care. Then they laugh and toss the cloth. A young man who is Kwame's friend, Ni Kofi, steps between them and gets a cut across his cheek that reads like a map. Kwame folds his hands and does not answer with more anger because he knows anger can burn down the whole block. He nurses Ni Kofi and eats at night with an old rice spoon and thinks about roads. A woman named Jerry comes into the store. I like a cool wind from a country road. She is a reporter from Nairobi, brown shoe leather and a small notebook, who hears about the fight from a cousin. She has a camera with her and a voice that can make a judge listen. She sees the brass key and asks about it. Kwame says it belonged to his grandmother, who used it to open the chest where they kept deeds and a few coins and a scrap of land paper. Nyeri writes his words down and she says she will follow the story because it tastes like truth. She takes photographs of hands that belong to the market. Hands with rice, hands with raw mango, hands with scars. Her pictures go online slowly and then quickly, and strangers in other towns begin to watch a market that seems small because news can make a small thing large. The fifth obstacle is the law, black and slow. The court hears the councilman's case and says the council owns the land. The traders cough and wait for help from a system that moves like an old lorry. Kwame goes to the courthouse and stands with his chest bare to the sun, and he watches men in suits read from thick files. A judge says the papers are in order. People cry in huts at the market after the hearing. And Jerry writes about these cries and posts a picture of a bent old woman holding a plastic fan. Someone comments that the market smells sad. Kwame walks home with the brass key humming against his sternum. He feels tired down to his shoes. At the midpoint, a twist moves the air. Kwame goes to the ocean one night and sits on a pier in the dark. He remembers fishing with his father and sees the moon like a coin in the sea. And Jerry sits beside him and says, "Tell me everything, Kwame." The brass key is heavy and warm. He takes off his cap and lifts his voice like a slow bell. He says his full name, Kwame Mensa. People who have watched him laugh at the idea of a Mensa with money. He tells how he left the market as a young man and went to Dakar and then Johannesburg and then Dakar again, working in shipping, learning how to move things across salt and time. He smiles and says, "I made a company." He hides the final line like a fish under a cloth. He says he used a different name, that he built a life and kept it distant because his father told him, "A man who shouts his wealth will lose his roots." And Jerry writes, but she is not sure. The twist is not simply that he is rich, it is that he did not want that to be the answer. He says, "I have money, but I do not want to buy this land alone. I want to make it a place for all of us." The meaning of his poor clothes flips like a card. He is not poor because he cannot be a billionaire. He is poor because he chooses to be close to the gate, to remember where a life begins. But the twist does more. Kwame pulls the brass key from his neck and holds it to the moon. He says the key is for a chest in Abidjan that holds papers. The chest holds the original deed to the land passed down through his family, and also a recording of men taking cash for signatures. He says he kept a quiet life so that he could gather proof without men seeing him. He is not the kind of billionaire who stomps in to buy a problem away. He is the kind who sits and waits for the right moment to show his hand. And Jerry's head tilts like a listening dog. She asks, "Why not show it now?" He answers with a slow smile and says, "Because this is not about me proving I have money. This is about the people being seen." The twist flips the whole idea of power. It is not money that matters as much as the timing and the witness. They gather witnesses quietly. Zuri, a boy who sells cold water on the corner, is asked to keep his small phone charged. Auntie Amma and Ni Kofi sign papers that show the true history of stalls passed down. Jerry files stories in fierce ways, and people in other cities read. Kwame calls old friends across the sea and brings back a lawyer with soft shoes and a mind like a blade. The movement grows like a vine, but the movement has more trouble waiting for the right moment than the developer expects. Kweku senses the slow building and moves like fire. He brings in men at night that throw a match, and one market stall becomes 2 and then 3. A smell of old wood and tar lifts, and the fire leaps hungry. Auntie Amma, who guards a recipe with a grin, leans over a pan and inhales smoke, and then she coughs and does not get up. Men drag her out. They shout and cover her with fabric. The smoke tastes like metal and sorrow. Kwame tries to carry her, and he drops her once, and the sound of her hit on the ground cracks him like a bone. She dies in the back of a van with the cloth stuck to the corner of her mouth. The market burns with a funeral for every stall. This is the crisis, the painful loss that breaks what patience had left. Auntie Amma is gone. The market is a row of black ribs under the sky, and Ni Kofi is taken to the hospital with burns. People look at Kwame with eyes that ask why he did not save them in time. At the courthouse, the councilman smiles like a victor. The crowd shrinks around embers. Kwame sits on the steps at night and feels the brass key like it is a stone in a river. He could answer with money. He could buy the land now, build a palace, and push the councilman out with a bank's cold hand. He could pay men to beat the men who beat them and make Kweku lose his teeth. Or he could choose something that costs more, reveal truth in a public place, and give the people the right to choose a future together, risk a storm of anger, risk a reaction that could scorch more than scorched wood. He must choose between private power and public trust. The choice is hard. He thinks of his grandmother's hands and the way she wrapped bread for children. He thinks of Auntie Amma's laugh. Kofi's small hand in his, burned and bandaged, whispers that the market's soul is more than a pile of goods. Kwame takes Ni Kofi's hand and ties the brass key into a small pouch. He writes on scraps of paper, and he asks Njeri to bring the press. He calls long distance, and he asks for a favor from a friend named Salif in Bamako, who once had a plane and knew how to put words on the wind. He asks Zuri to charge his phone one more time. He walks the market with a slow march and tells each person he will not sell them out. People look at him with faces like rain. The multi-climax comes like a sunrise that no one thought could reach them. The council plans a grand opening for the mall's first foundation laying. They invite the mayor and singers in white coats and a ribbon that will be cut by Nana Abankwa with a pair of golden scissors. Kadis. AIM and the people plan something else. They set their meeting at the same place and ask everyone in the city to come. Njeri calls the radio stations. A boy with a drone named Thabo offers to lift pictures into the sky. A woman with a loud voice and skin like burnished copper sings and calls people to gather. The press comes with cameras and line lights. Kweku brings more men with suits the color of rain. On the day, the square is full like a mouth. The smell of food stir-fries the air, and birds fly like small commas. A long red cloth hides the mayor's table, and the brass scissors glow on a satin pillow. Kwame walks through, and the crowd thickens around him. He is not wearing a suit. He is wearing a shirt with a patch on the elbow and a hat that has known too much sun. He carries his brass key in his hand. He climbs a step and looks out. Drones drift like distant gulls, and men with phones stand like a sea. The councilman smiles, and the camera loves his smile. Kwame holds up the brass key, and his voice is like a drum. He says the name that makes the councilman's smile fall. "My name is Kwame Mensah." He pulls his hat off, and the crowd hums. He has a way they did not expect, calm and hard. He opens his hand, and a second later the lawyer from Dakar steps forward with papers. And Jerry's camera is on him, and her fingers shake, but not with fear. The lawyer speaks in clear words. The chest is in Abidjan, and the deed is in the chest, and it shows the market belongs to the people of Osu, and that the council's papers are forged. The crowd breathes out. The councilman's jaw tightens. At the same time, little Zuri lifts his small phone and goes live. He had hidden a recording inside the rot of a crate where Kweku used to count his money, and he had filmed the developer handing envelopes to a man who looks a lot like the councilman. The video feeds phones like water. People watch and their faces fold in disbelief. The councilman tries to speak, and the sound of his voice is like something breaking. Jerry leans into her mic and plays for the crowd and for the cameras. The sound that makes the councilman's hand go cold, a voice saying, "Sign and the money is yours," and the rustle of bills. There is a man with a face like a map behind the councilman who tries to push forward and says, "This is theater." He means to hide a scar. But the drone circled and caught him with a file in his hand, and soon the police are not so sure where their orders come from. The spectacle is complete when Kwame walks down into the crowd and hands the brass key to Auntie Ama's son, who has been bent with grief. He says, "You hold this. It is a promise." He tells the crowd that he will not buy the land for himself but will open a trust so the market can be owned by them. He will fund a rebuilding with the money he has and call on others to help. He will set up schools, a clinic, a place for children to sleep that is safe from rain. The billionaire who was once a rumor becomes a man who lays out checks in public. He opens his old briefcase, and there are names on the checks, and they are written with long strokes. Cameras crowd him like bees. An unexpected witness rises in a way that no one planned. The mayor's own aide, a woman who sweeps papers at the office, steps forward with a file she had kept. She had been given the forged paper and refused to sign. The paper reveals a second layer of collusion. The aide speaks softly at first, then louder, and tells how she saw men move boxes at night. She points at the councilman who cannot meet her eyes. The live stream sends that to thousands. A lawyer in the crowd reads the affidavits, and the police who come to the square are quiet for a long moment. The councilman is stripped of power in front of many witnesses when an old law officer holds up the recording, and an arrest is made in public so the men cannot hide. The cries that rise are part anger, part relief. Kweku's face twists, and his tie becomes a noose of paper as people begin to demand answers and refunds. The city watches, and beyond the city a network of people who follow in Jerry's posts begin to send money and messages. Salif in Bamako wires funds to rebuild. An old friend in Dakar who once owed Kwame a life sends a bulldozer and men who spill concrete like bread. A TV in Johannesburg calls and asks for interview. Kwame tells the truth in a way that makes him famous but different. He says the deeds mean nothing without the people who use the land. The developer's contract is nullified when the forged papers are shown, and the councilman is taken to a place where a judge can see the mess. The public strip shows the power of witness more than a man's money. For the first time in years, the city sees a man who laughs not to hide but to offer. But the reveal brings trouble. Kweku hires lawyers and men who whisper threats. There are nights when Kwame wakes to the sound of a motor and the smell of someone burning plastic by the roadside. He receives a letter with a thin threat and a cheap bullet inside. Nii Kofi, recovering in a clinic with new skin, tells Kwame to slow down and to hide. The people who laughed at him now chant his name like a prayer, and he does not know what to do with that. He answers by going to the market and rolling up his sleeves. He signs checks and he sweeps ash. He builds a plan with the lawyer and Auntie Ama's family, and in Jerry makes a program to teach children about law. He organizes a council of shopkeepers and young men and women who know how to fix pipes. The brass key is a symbol now, not a private thing, and he puts it in a small box that hangs in the new market office. 6 months after the fire and the great day of reveal, the market is a place that smells like hope. New stalls line up in bright colors, and the food is made with a steadier hand. There is a clinic with a small bell and a teacher named Fatima who reads to children under a tin roof. The gate stands open because it is a gate for everyone now. The bronze of the brass key hangs on a wall plate that reads, "For the people, by the people." The plaque is hammered by hand, and a child named Zuri is the first to touch it. He laughs and holds the key like a bird. Men who once wore suits like armor work with a spade and learn to lift with a rope. Nana Abankwa sits in a small office and signs papers under a judge's eye. His fate is small now, a shame that tastes like tin. Kweku has to account for money and finds his deals unmade. The courts move slowly, but the city moves faster now. People find ways to feed each other again. Kwame does not live like a king. He keeps his cap and he pays for the tea he drinks at a stall. He sometimes sits and watches the children climb the gate, and he hears laughter, because laughter is a sound that heals. He teaches a class about the law at the market, and kids come with notebooks. Jerry writes a long piece about how one man's choice made a city ask itself who owns a home. The brass key becomes a thing people kiss when they bring a new idea to the Council of Traders. He sometimes wonders if he did right by telling the world he was rich, because now every messenger asks for something. But the people who stand with him say the key opens more than a chest. It opens a way where people keep an eye on those who hold power. A new rule comes to town. No sale of market land without a town meeting and a public vote. The mayor, who took the oath to protect the people, is replaced by a council that has laughing voices, and the clinic gets its funding. A park grows on land where a burned wall once stood, and children find a place to play soccer with a ball that is patched but round like promise. Fatima's school grows like a sapling, and she names one class after Auntie Amma. The market hums like a clean instrument. People sleep with the windows open because they feel safe. Kwame teaches the children how a note in a file can change a life, and how a key is only as important as the door it opens. The show of public exposure is not a simple victory. It is messy. Kweku finds new ways to push back, and the law takes its time. Some deals are only delayed, and some wounds do not heal. But the neighborhood now has a voice, and the voice is heard further. There are more cameras, but also more care. Kwame learns to listen to young men who are angry and to shape that anger into work. He spends afternoons teaching how to read deeds and how to keep records. The brass key hangs in a box where everyone can touch it by appointment, and people come to see it and tell their grandchildren about the time a watchman stood with a key and became more than a rumor. 6 months later, the gate is not a thin line between power and the street. It is a place of return. The brass key is mounted on the front of the market office on a bronze plaque, and every morning people touch it as they pass like blessing. Kwame walks through the market now with less weight on his shoulders. He visits the clinic and sits with Ni Kofi, who jokes about having a scar that is now a map of courage. He laughs and says he is only the watchman that never slept. Nigeri's story has reached other cities, and a woman in Dakar comes to say thank you and leaves with a packet of seeds for the market garden. Children plant the seeds and the soil remembers rain. A small gallery opens to sell crafts that once sat under tarps. The city learns to put people before polished glass. Nana Abankwa works in a small office, and the people sometimes pass him with spare bread. He no longer has his fists. The brass key, scarred and warm in the sun, is both the same key that swung in the first morning and a new thing that watches over a wider life. It has stopped being only a word to make boys laugh. It is a promise that a man made good on, not to take power and hide it, but to take it and give it back. The watchman is still at the gate sometimes, but now his face is known by dozens, and his hands have the map of a town. He finds himself called Mensa when people ask for help, and they say it with a little pride. He has a small office that smells of paper and lemon, and he uses it to sign off on small grants for the people. The old fear that a single man with a suit could end them has lessened because there are many eyes now and more hands to write. The story does not end with a crown. It ends with work. There are days when Kwame walks to the pier and watches ships pass like slow, patient ideas. He thinks about the mercy he chose instead of revenge. He remembers Auntie Amma and the smell of her stew. He watches a boy hand a basket of bread to an old woman, and he understands the measure of what he did. The city is imperfect, and so are its people, but the gate is open, and the brass key tells a new story. True power is the courage to open gates for others, not the keys you hide. Do you think he did the right thing? Yes or no? If this story touched you, share it with a friend and follow for more stories that lift voices from cities across Africa. The interval marker you asked me to honor is this. Kwame Mensah's wealth, once whispered about behind closed doors, is no longer a rumor at all, but a ledger held in public light, and the crowd that once watched a gate now watches a man who chose to turn power into a village. Tonight the gate is not the edge of a market, but the threshold of a promise, and the first steps toward that promise must be taken under the gaze of cameras, drums, and the sharp whisper of donkeys and danfo horns outside the square as rain threatens the zinc roofs and makes the air smell of damp earth and new beginnings. Kwame knows the risk in every word he speaks now, every gesture that could be misread as greed, but the people have learned to read him differently, like a map that shows where to walk when fear sits on the chest. He climbs the platform again, not in the old cap that earned jokes, but with a shirt that holds a collar pin shaped like the brass key, and he says plainly to Nana Abankwa's successor, to the reporters with yellow notes, to the market women who sit on crates and count the murmurs of the crowd, the land belongs to Osu, because Osu has fed this market with its sweat and its prayers. We will vote on a future that keeps us all alive. The crowd answers with a heartbeat in unison and a cry for order that sounds like rain. But the road ahead is not smooth. The city's old wounds, the ones the councilman tried to seal with a ribbon cutting, begin to sting again as the first debates over the new rules' flavor surface. Do you open a gate to everyone, or do you curate access with a velvet rope? Kwame's plan is to fund a real living market, a cooperative that shares profits, not a spectacle where money buys silence. He speaks about a council of traders and a school and a clinic and a garden. He names names of small vendors who need a fair chance and a student who will not drop out for lack of a meal. The wealth gap that once looked like a chasm is shown here as a possible staircase, a ladder built from receipts and trust. Yet Kweku is not done. The developer's shadow lengths stretch across the city as a reminder that wealth, once hidden behind the door of a chest in Abidjan, can become a warning sign when it travels without a map. The interval beat lingers. The moment Kwame revealed his money was not to buy land or power, but to show the people how to claim both, and now someone is counting the cost aloud. What does a community pay for sovereignty, and who pays the price if the money runs out? The question lands on Fatima's clay roof, and on the stall where Auntie Amma's son still stands, the brass key safe within the new market office, the plaque that reads, "A Promise," in every blow of the hammer. The Act Two engine begins to hum with time pressure and public stakes. The town must vote in a month, and the rules are not simple. A simple majority will not suffice if the donors, who are still listening from the margins, fear the behemoth of a new kind of government of people, not of paper. The first micro-cliffhanger lands when Zuri, the water cellar boy with a phone that charges from a solar panel strapped to a stall, sends a live feed from the edge of the square where the crowd has formed a living house. Of voices. He has a guardian's instinct. He knows that the moment when someone says, "This is theater," is the moment to test whether the theater will yield a new stage for justice or become a curtain for cowardice. Kwame watches and tunes his words to be simple enough for a child to repeat, but strong enough to bind a neighborhood. He tells the crowd that this is not a gift from a man in a suit, but a shared space, earned by many hands, and the people lean in, tasting the possibility of a future that does not require a single fist to close someone's mouth or a single ledger to silence a grandmother's memory. Gate, which once housed a daily negotiation with danger, now houses a daily vow, to prove that a city can survive the heat of greed if it chooses to keep its breath for one another. Midway through this paragraph, a turning point arrives that reframes the entire action. A quiet, almost shy figure emerges from the back of the crowd, the market's old custodian of records, a woman named Ya, who keeps ledgers that smell of rain and tar and the sea salt dust from the Abidjan voyage her father once described. She taps Kwame on the shoulder, passes him a weathered envelope, and whispers that the chest is not just a legal relic, but a memory bank. The kind of archive that forces a city to decide if justice is a habit or a spectacle. Inside the envelope is a stack of receipts, a photocopy of a deed, and a single line scrawled in a child's handwriting from Auntie Ama's daughter. When the ground shakes, open the roof of the sky. Ya's presence is a hinge. It shifts the movement from reactive defense to proactive restoration. Kwame reads the contents aloud to the crowd, and the room falls into a heavy, hopeful quiet as the copies show forged signatures, forged dates, a chain of signatures that wind back to the councilman's office. It is not just that Kwame has money, it is that someone with the power to turn a gate into a tombstone tried to bury the truth in a legal maze. The police arrive to take notes, the cameras zoom, and in Jerry's live feed captures the moment the lie takes a shell-shock fastener to its own heart. We forged, we bought, we lied, the documents declare, and the crowd grows louder with the kind of courage that makes a rumor dissolve into a chorus of facts. The escalation now comes at the level of personal risk. Kwame's decision to open the gate for all means that he must also guard the gate against those who would turn openness into vulnerability. A shadow figure, a man in a raincoat who resembles a banker more than a thief, slides into the square with a new plan, a private offer to buy the entire cooperative to turn it into a micro-market district where the poor sell to the middle class and the middle class buy their comfort with a manager's smile. He speaks softly enough for the crowd to hear without hearing the truth, offering short-term relief and a glossy prospectus, claiming he can stabilize the market with a few signatures and a sequence of small loans. Kwame counters with a public counteroffer, a transparent fund seeded by a coalition of local vendors, small donors, and a few international friends who want to see a city practice what it preaches. The price is not money, but time. A month of public meetings, town hall debates, and a continuous flow of receipts that track every coin, every pencil sketch of a schoolroom, every bus fare saved by a family who can now rise early to open a stall without fear of eviction. The new rule edges closer to reality, but the shadow banker presses, and for a moment the crowd sees a potential of ruin, a quiet reenactment of the old power where money can quiet a voice longer than a voice can endure the pain of losing a home. The legal and social battles push Kwame toward a sharper, cleaner victory, the kind that makes the antagonist's missteps obvious to all. The turning point reappears when Zuri's drone footage reveals something even more dangerous than forged deeds, a thread in the system of exploitation that threads from the city hall to the bank to the developer's office and back to the street where a child once sold water. The footage shows a pattern of donations, not for the common good, but for the appearance of good, with money bouncing between hands like a ball and landing in pockets where it should not have landed. Kwame, who once stood as a simple watchman, realizes that to end the cycle of exploitation, he must do more than reveal a forgery. He must reweave the system in daylight, with witnesses and a chorus and a plan that cannot be bought off by a better suit. He gathers Fatima, the clinic nurse who can read a ledger as if it were a patient's heartbeat, Auntie Ama's daughter, who now runs a cooperative kitchen and can swallow fear to speak truth at the podium. Kofi, who has a scar that maps courage. Jerry, who knows that a story is a tool as much as a shield. And the town's old blacksmith, who now learns to sign receipts and draft budgets. Together, they craft a people's charter that will be placed on the wall of the new market office and that requires annual public votes, open book audits, and a rotating council of vendors who must answer directly to those who live here, not to the orbit of an outside investor. The mid-paragraph turning point culminates in a scene where someone tries to silence the crowd with a gun's cold whisper, but the gun never fires. The deputy who would have given the order hesitates, watches the lights from the drones above, and withdraws, because the fear of consequences is now greater than the fear of losing a stall. By the time the 6-month interval of the first public victory arrives, the market is no longer a battlefield, but a living classroom. The gate remains open, and the brass key hangs not on Kwame's chest, but on the wall of the market office, a symbol that invites every child to touch and try and trust. A new system has grown. Stalls are assigned by transparent rotas. Repairs are funded by a pooled fund with a visible ledger. The clinic runs on patient fees but lifts the worst cases with a rotating grant. And Fatima's school becomes a memory of Auntie Ama's laughter in the very first classroom window, a memory that feeds the next generation of leadership. The wealthy donor class, once a sound behind closed doors, now speaks in the language of return on trust, not profit. And even the bankers who once eyed the Osu market with cynicism begin to see a possible model for a city where wealth does not silence but serves. Kwame's life has not become a palace. It has become a workshop, a place where he can be seen taking a teacup with one hand and writing a grant with the other, where the gate is not a barrier but a bridge, and where the key is a brittle instrument that has learned to sing when it is turned with care. The last image of this chapter is a child resting her hand on the plaque, a boy teaching a younger sibling how to count coins honestly, and Kwame, now called Mensa by many but still the man who keeps the old cap ready for a day of rain, stepping through the market toward the pier to watch the ships drift by as slowly as a new day waking, thinking of the mercy he chose and the mercy that is still to come. The true power remains the courage to open gates for others, not the keys you hide. And if you ask him aloud whether he did the right thing, he will answer with the quiet posture of a man who has learned that justice is a lifetime practice, not a single moment of triumph. If this story touched you, share it with a friend and follow for more stories that lift voices from cities across Africa. The gate is open, the people are watching, and the next chapter waits just beyond the horizon line.